Okay, so we're all set. Okay, that's good. All right, so this evening we're continuing our sessions on the future of health and healing. And this evening we're going to be exploring that further. And we're going to be looking at some very enlightening information. So I'm going to get ready to share my screen with you. That's okay, so our topic, the future of health and healing, a very important topic because when it comes to health, whichever side of it we're on, if we're on the right side of health, it has a very big impact on our well-being. If we're on the wrong side of health, it has a very big impact on our well-being. And so because it impacts our life perhaps more than any other area of our lives in terms of well-being, it's very, very important. And I'm starting, there are a couple of quotes that I have there on the screen that you'll see. One is the World Health Organization definition of what health is. It's the complete state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Well, you're not seeing my screen. Harold, could you just, are you seeing my screen? Someone just sent a note saying that my screen is not showing. Just 1 second. Okay now. Okay, it's back up. All right, I'm sorry about that. So we have the World Health Organization's definition of health, and they say it's a state of complete physical, mental, and social. And for me, it's not altogether complete because it does not include our spiritual well-being, which is an important aspect of who we are as human beings. This definition is an old definition. It's what they use today, but they established this in 1948, and it's still what they use today. When I say the future of health and healing, I'm talking about coming to a time where we have to re-examine the way how we approach health, the way how we understand health, the way how we and how we understand healing. And it's necessary and very important that we look at a new paradigm and shifting from the old understanding from which this definition was taken. And the healthcare system that we have today, which I refer to as an old system, even though it's what's currently being used, I call it an old system because it does not serve us as an evolving species and where we are going in the future. Even though we are spending billions and trillions of dollars into research and development, and we're advancing in technology, and we are increasing our know-how, the pace of disease is staying ahead of the healthcare system. And so I call it an old system because it is a system that only runs and the wheels of the system only turn if sickness and disease is happening. If sickness and disease were to stop, the system would come to a halt. And so, what incentive is there to take a system that requires sickness and disease to happen in order for that system to work? What incentive is there to use that system to try and decrease the incidence of illness? Or how can you even use a system that relies on illness in order for the system to work to decrease the incidence of illness? And is there an incentive to take away what makes you profitable? And so that system, while it may save our life, it does not really serve us for what true health and real healing is. I also have a quote there from Bill Gates, who everyone would know. Um, he's, of course, a big philanthropist when it comes to the whole healthcare sector. He said, treatment without prevention is simply unsustainable. And very much in agreement with that. But the system that we currently have, which does not focus on prevention, we need to focus on that. And when we say prevention, prevention really speaks to personal responsibility. And so, as we consider the future of health and healing, and which requires us to really make a paradigm shift in our thinking and our understanding, as we begin to do that, we need to steady ourselves and gear ourselves that it's going to require us being taking personal responsibility, perhaps on a level that we have not engaged before. And so I want to begin with this quote that came from a famous inventor, Thomas Edison, who said, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease." I want to highlight the first and the last sentence, that the doctor of the future will give no medicine. I consider myself a doctor of the future. I have spent 25 years in clinical practice of naturopathic medicine, and while I've seen lots of good things happen in terms of people recovering from various illnesses, I also understand that in many cases where people have recovered, somewhere down the road, they may develop something else or a reoccurrence of something down the road. But I consider myself a doctor of the future that will come to a point, and I'm already stepping into it, where there will be no medicine, but will educate and empower people to the cause of illness and therefore the prevention of illness. And where we're going this evening is the future of health and healing is to understand the true nature of health and the true nature of healing, which would help us to be able to adjust and expand our awareness in such a way that we could engage life to where we can actually live disease-free through the healing potential and through the prevention of disease by taking responsibility for the way we live and go about our daily lives. I also want to share this about Thomas Edison, who created the light bulb as we know it today. When that was introduced into society back in the 1800s, it represented a superior shift in what the world was accustomed to when it came to lighting up spaces. However, even though it was a complete paradigm shift from what everyone was accustomed to, it took more than a generation for it to be culturally accepted. Many people thought of it as just another form of what was already available. People were skeptical about it because it was unfamiliar. They didn't know this thing called electricity. They felt it was dangerous and harmful, and other reasons why people shunned away from it. But look how long it took before society would adopt it as being something that It's not like the old, it's a completely new shift in paradigm. And that's where we're going this evening as well, is that we have to shift a complete paradigm shift in the way we think and understand about health and about healing. This is important because this is what we're faced with today. The World Health Organization calls it the global burden of disease because pretty much every country on the planet suffers with this malady. It is every government, their biggest bill for the economy is their healthcare bill. And not only is this a global pandemic, but the percentages and the incidences are annually increasing. And it seems to be increasing rapidly, more rapidly as the years go by. Not only are the percentages increasing, but the ages are getting younger and younger. Illnesses that used to affect what we would call the older folks, now the younger folks are getting. Things like arthritis, men with prostate problems in their 30s. So we are seeing we have a global pandemic that is far greater than the COVID pandemic that everyone was so fearful of and shut the world down, killed 20 million people over the 2 years. Here we have a pandemic that's killing 50 million people every year, and it's growing and it's becoming and it's increasing. So there is a need, there is an urgency, because there's nothing that disrupts our quality of life and our potential to live at the level of life that we are all meant to live at more than this thing that we call sickness and disease. Now, unlocking the human potential, human healing potential, I just want to share these few quotes with you from well-renowned and recognized people in our day, of course, starting with Hippocrates, the father of medicine, just for us to get climatized to and let it sink in that we as human beings have the potential to heal and repair from any disease. And that's any disease. And this is all medically documented, even though it's not being practiced or enforced, which is why we now have to look at this shift. The natural healing force within each of us is the greatest force in getting well. Dr. Joe Dispenza said the body has the innate capacity to heal itself once we remove the interference, especially the interference of the mind. Dr. Bruce Lipton said, the moment you change your perception is the moment you rewrite the chemistry of your body. These are very, very powerful statements that are all validated scientifically through things like epigenetics, psychoneuroimmunology, and quantum biology. Deepak Chopra said that the physical body is a field of energy, transformation, and intelligence. And when given the right condition, it knows how to return to balance and heal spontaneously. Now, spontaneous healing is a phenomenon that they have tens of thousands of records from people all over the world who have healed from incurable or medically incurable, as well as terminal illnesses. They completely recover without any type of medical intervention or without any type of specific course of treatment that they were following. And hence they call it spontaneous, meaning that there's no cause as to why these people completely recovered from such detrimental conditions. But there's always a cause. Nothing happens without a cause. But just for us to get it in that, within you and I, we possess the capacity to heal and to repair and to regenerate from everything. We see it happen, and there's so much documented evidence. In case you may not be familiar with it, that we have loads of information on the internet where you can do your research if you have that interest, and you can see that within the medical system, whether it be the placebo effect or spontaneous healing, quantum biology, epigenetics, and the sciences of psychoneuroimmunology, they all show that the body could completely heal and regenerate from pretty much any condition. Now, why is it that if this is true, that the incidence of sickness and disease is continually perpetuating and getting worse? Why is the healthcare bill of the planet becoming worse, that it's now called the global burden of disease. If we have the capacity to heal from pretty much any condition, why is it getting worse? Well, I want to share a model with you, and I'm not going to get into the details of this model, but to help just to give us a framework of it, of understanding, so that we can see how it works and why it is that this is not going our way or in our favor. So, as three-dimensional beings, body, soul, spirit, there is a natural order, a natural creative order to the flow of life. And we talked about this in previous sessions, and whether you want to call it flowing from spirit to body, from energy to matter, from the formless into form, this is an infinite flow of creative order that is throughout the whole ecosystem of creation. The cosmos, it dances according to this rhythm. We see it in nature. We see it in the cycles of nature. We see it within our own human body, where from the very formation in the womb to how it unfolded to here we are today sitting. And every minute that passes, billions of cells are being renewed and reformed. And it's a process that is perpetual. It never stops. This is a process and a flow of life that goes from the invisible into the visible, from the formless into form. That is the creative order, from inner to outer, from the seed to a shoot to a fruit on the tree. And so life flows from the inside out. We get sick from the inside out. We heal from the inside out. We age from the inside out. This is the natural creative order that perpetually persists, and it flows from the very essence of our being, which is spirit, which unfolded into another aspect, what we can call it mind, which unfolded into body. This is a whole, the dynamics of this teachings is part of our workshop. However, what we just need to gather from this is that the body, which is what houses us in this earthly existence and takes us through life, is the vehicle that takes us through life. The body is a physical expression of our inner essence of spirit. Just like a seed would push out a shoot and it shoots above the ground and pushes out a leaf, just like the leaf is not separate from the shoot and the shoot is not separate from the roots. It's just one flow. In a very similar way, that unfolding from the essence of our very source of life, unfolding into mind and body, it is one essential flow, an infinite flow of life and creative order. I'm not going to get too deep into that. When it comes to the body, when diet, nutrition, exercise, rest, and these type of things, that's very critically important in order to sustain the body. And when it comes to health and healing and sickness and disease, the focus is on the external, because we have been conditioned to look to the external for our value. And so diet and nutrition, while it's important and while it's necessary, that is not where the real focus ought to be, because the inner is really an expression of the outer. See, by divine design, the body is not even built to accommodate sickness. Once the essence, the true essence of life that's flowing continuously, continuously renewing our bodies every minute, every second, that process never stops. We get a cut, it will heal. We break a bone, it will mend. It's a perpetual flow that never stops. It started in the womb and it will continue and continue until the day we cease to exist on this planet. But the very design is not built to accommodate the illness, provided that the flow is in its creative order. The outer world reflects the inner world, and the condition of the body directly reflects the inner alignment or misalignment that's coming from our true essence of being, which is inner. It is important that we pay attention that soul, which is the aspects of mind, heart, and will, our thoughts, emotions, where we make our choice. This is where we navigate life. This is the bridge between the two, between our spiritual and physical nature, between the formless and the form, between the energy and the matter. The bridge between the two is the mind. And this is where the problem occurs. The problem happens when the flow gets hindered from spirit to soul to body. And here on this diagram, you see that the problem happens when the flow becomes inverted, when it turns backward. Whereas our outer reality becomes our dimension of truth as opposed to our inner. There is, as to why that happens, that's a conversation for another time, but we are inadvertently conditioned. We grew up in a world and we are societally conditioned to look at the external reality through our sensory perceptions. We look to the external world as the reality of where truth and value comes. And so we invert the natural flow of life from external to internal. And that's why we our sense of identity is more in our physical nature. We find value more in the things of the external reality. It's why things like, in order for us to feel success, we need to see money on the bank first. We would not feel and see ourselves necessarily successful if there's no money there. We we take value generally from the outside in, and this inverts the flow. And I want us to understand, and we're going to see how it's going to become clearer, that when the flow of life is inverted from outside to in, it creates an inner conflict right in our soul, right? Our mind, this is where the conflict happens. This is where the interference happens. This is where the disorder begins to take place. This is where the disturbance happens. It's an inner conflict that obscures our essence of our true spiritual essence. So today, you and I would agree and we would say that we are spiritual beings, but we really have no conceptual understanding of what that is, nor do we have any experiential awareness, except sometimes we may touch it and taste it. And so we know that there's a reality there of it, but we don't know how to conceptualize it into becoming a part of our, what augments and what calibrates and what facilitates our living experience, because we've been conditioned otherwise. So that's a process of change. But disease, which we experience in the human body, is as a result of that hindrance that happens in our soul, and we have a word for it. We call it stress. And that stress really is a resistance, an inner resistance between our outer and our inner nature, between our body and our spiritual nature, that's supposed to be one seamless whole, one free seamless whole. It's now fractured. There's now a fracture between, and the creative order, rather than flow free and seamless through, it is now inverted. And so that resistance, just like if you're going against the flow of a river, you feel the resistance. And so this is really the model as to why, if we don't understand and get this right, if we can't get the flow, the natural creative order and flow of life to come from the very source of where our life is coming from, which is whole and complete in itself, if we don't reorder that and we don't get the flow back, we will always live in what we call a stressful life, and we will not be able to avoid disease. I don't care if you live in the gym, if you take all the vitamins in the world and eat the best diet. It may just take longer to get to you, but it will get to you unless life returns to its creative order. And so when the body becomes sick, It signals a resistance in the free flow of that spiritual essence that flows from within. That's the order from inside out. And so to restore wholeness, which is what true health is, we have to return to that place of being, that place of homeostasis. Holistic homeostasis, meaning that we have to have balance in every dimension of our being. And that only happens one way, when life flows from the inside out. So when it comes to true health and healing, healing is not really for the body. The healing must happen in the soul before it happens in the body. Healing must happen where the bridge is. The healing must happen inside before it shows up on the outside. And so because we have not understood this or have not approached it this way within the larger framework of the healthcare system, and we focus on the external, what we have is a system that deals with relief, control, and management as opposed to true healing. Healing is really restoration. So when a person says, my body has been healed, but they still have some measure of symptoms, or they say my body has been healed and then a condition returns, it may have been suspended. And we see this happen all the time. This is really important for us to understand. And in the workshops that's going to be coming up in the near future, we break this down as to the dynamics of how this unfolds. But just to understand that our bodies will naturally heal when the flow of the essence of its life flows from inside out. And so the quality of our physical well-being is 100% related to the quality of life that flows from inside out. And if the soul or the mind is not receiving its life and the qualities from the true essence of our being, and is receiving that from the outside in, creating an inner conflict, what we call stress, then we will always have this internal struggle and dysfunction inside our bodies. And so we can manage it well to where we all may deal with it differently, but sooner or later it gets to us and we call it old age and we end up with a disease. That does not have to happen. This is the model that we want to correct and create. And so our focus must be on the central part, what we call stress, what we call mind, what we call emotions, the part that navigates life, the part that's experiencing what we call life. The whole experience of this whole journey between birth and death, that whole experience is happening in this dimension we call soul. It's just expressed in the body, but the essence of it flows from the inside out. According to the major authorities on this planet, stress is the number one cause of disease and dysfunction. Up to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. Stress is the basic cause of 75 to 90% of all human illness and disease. These are coming from major authorities. Over 90% of disease is caused by stress, thoughts, and beliefs. And the biggest institutions on this planet that govern over health, they say between 60 to 80% of people in modern societies live in a chronic or recurring state of stress. This is how we live. But we don't understand stress sufficiently in order to be able to address it well, because we treat stress as though it's also an external issue. And so we talk in terms of a stressful life. The job is stressful. Dealing with these people are stressful. The bills that I have to deal with, the traffic that I have to deal with, it's all external realities that is making this life a stressful life. But that's not where stress is. It's life would be life, and what happens is what happens. How we interpret it, how we respond to it, that comes from inside. And once we have that fracture, once we have that inner conflict, and that inner conflict is with ourselves, not with anyone else. The inner conflict is with ourselves. Once that exists, our response to what happens externally in life is always going to be viewed through a lens of separation, because it's a fracture, it's a conflict. But just for us to see that stress If we can get a hold of this, but stress is not external. But if we can't get a hold of stress, we're not, if it is the major cause for disease, and indeed it is, and there are experts all over, and part of my work now is right in this area. Absolutely stress. But what is stress? Because we don't seem to be very clear in understanding what stress is. But stress really is an inner conflict. And I'm going to show you what it looks like right after this slide. But stress is the conflict that arises when our soul, our heart and mind, is out of alignment with our true essence of being. It is the emotional pressure or the dissonance we feel between how we have been conditioned to live and how we are designed to live. I want you all to listen to this very carefully because this holds the real key to living a more effective life, not just a disease-free life. It's when we betray ourselves and choose actions contrary to our beliefs and values, arising from a sense of identity drawn from external reality instead of our internal. So you see, there's an inner conflict that we have with ourselves because of how we've been conditioned to live. And when we come into the knowledge of knowing better, and we try to do better, and we try to change it, we find it to be an uphill climb or an upstream paddle. And indeed, trying to do it upstream because we're going against a resistance and we're doing it without the understanding of what it is we're really dealing with. Stress, this is what stress looks like because we think it's external, but this is all an inner conflict. It is experienced in life one way, but pretending it's another. These are just some. We could list 100 of these things. It is the conflict between what we desire and believing whether it's possible or not. It is saying we value truth, but hide how we really feel. It is when our sense of worth is defined by the opinions of others. When we seek in validation and approval and acceptance, all inner conflict. When we have these insecurities and these this not enoughness about ourselves. It is the conflict between what we value and what we tolerate. It's valuing a healthy life but not prioritizing healthy habits. All conflict. It's wanting to be loved but fear rejection and feeling unworthy. It's thinking or feeling one thing yet saying or doing another thing. It is when fear-based living overrides a love-centered life. It is conflict within ourselves. When we have this inner frailty, when we have this fracture between ourselves, when we know what is the good thing to do or the right thing to do, but for whatever reason choose to do the contrary, when we have this contradiction in the way we live, we will forever live a stressful life. It doesn't matter because if we were to straighten it out and there was no more an inner conflict, all hell could break loose outside, and one thing will happen is that you would have an immovable peace and an overflowing joy and a flow of life that comes from the inside out that has no other way to manifest itself but in everything that resembles peace, harmony. Your heart is overflowing with gratitude, and it does not matter what's happening on the outside, because when we view life through that lens, it is a completely different paradigm. All of that unfolds through our workshops. However, I just want us to get an idea that stress, it's not what's happening outside, it's what's happening inside. Stress is not caused by the world itself, but by how we perceive and respond to the world based on our internal framework, our perceptions, our beliefs, our values, our expectations. And so we don't see life as it is, we see life as we are. It's our state of being. When our beliefs, values, emotions, and actions become one frequency, when how we think, how we feel, how we speak, and how we act is one and the same. This is life flowing from the inside out. This is peace. This is freedom. This is the end of stress, and this is the end of dis-ease. That fracture, we just have to reorder it. It has to flow from inside out, from our true essence of being. And this is a learning There's a learning and an unlearning that has to be done. But this is the future of where true health and real healing is, because the body has its own innate capacity to recover from anything. But if we stay in this state of what we term stress, which is this inner conflict between how we are on the inside and how we respond on the outside, it is only a matter of time before we spiral gradually down into something that we call a dis-ease. And dis-ease is not negative. When we start getting symptoms of various things showing up in our bodies, those are just signals. It's signals that the creative order is not right. It is signals that we need to look inwardly and examine. When we have emotions that are not harmonious and consistent with the flow of order, peace, harmony, gratitude, collaboration, unity. But when we have emotions that are discomforting in any way, those are our GPS. That is our internal GPS that tells us we are off track. We are not flowing with the order of life, and we need to examine inside. So understand that stress, it's not the attitudes of the people that you got to deal with that's stressing you out. It is how you're interpreting and seeing it because you are fractured on the inside. You see life one way on the outside, but you may feel differently on the inside. We do it all the time. If we were to examine ourselves, we will see that we live like this all the time. We live fractured. Now the question is, how did we get there and how can you turn it around? That's a conversation for another time. But this is really what stress is. It's internal, not external. Now, that whole very experience of life that we go through, that we call stress, that we call anything, our entire experience of life, the gateway to that experience that leads to whether we are healthy or sick, whether our bodies are disease-free or developing disease, is the central nervous system. That is the gateway for our experience. Everything we experience happens because of the central nervous system. The central nervous system is the brain and the entire nervous system throughout the body. And the central nervous system is the bridge between the formless and the form. It is the bridge between the mind and the body. What transpires in the mind and translates into the body, the bridge for that is the central nervous system. So to understand it, the central nervous system, which we call the CNS, it extends to the autonomic nervous system, which is what controls all bodily functions. All of our functions in our body, right down to the cellular level, is being controlled, is being regulated by the autonomic nervous system. Means that it is all happening automatically. That autonomic nervous system is broken in or separates into two branches. One side of it, which they call the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS, that deals with stress. So whenever the sympathetic nervous system, what they call the fight-flight response, is activated by chronic stress, it leads to just about every kind of autoimmune and lifestyle condition that you can think of. It lies at the root. But for disease to develop, this part of the nervous system is what has to be active. Chronic stress promotes oxidation and systemic inflammation, the root of most lifestyle diseases, gut dysfunction, DNA damage, and premature aging. Stress, which of course is a big umbrella under which there's subsettings, but stress, it activates when the stress, and it's the negatives of life. And it's all based on perception. And that perception is based on the order of flow. When this system is activated, the stress response, things start declining. The immune system declines. Inflammation begins to develop. The body's ability to repair and regenerate slows down. energy starts decreasing. In fact, let me say this to you, that when a person says they're lacking energy, it's because your system, this system is very active. When you lack vitality, it's gone even further down. Let it run that way because the body is continuously trying to correct itself. In fact, that's what symptoms are. Symptoms is your body pushing back against the stress to try to rebalance itself. It creates something called a symptom. But because we don't understand that, we take something to shut the system down. So the central nervous system, which is our gateway for experience, divided into two sections. The sympathetic, that deals with whenever there's the stress response. What's the stress response? Our thoughts and our emotions are not in harmony with our true essence of being. When that is so, now you understand why 60 to 80% of people in a modern society live with this. And statistics in neuroscience says that 75 to 80% of modern people in modern societies, they live with the sympathetic nervous system always in overdrive. Our body is always fighting against this. The other part, the parasympathetic nervous system, the second part of the autonomic nervous system, this one deals with healing and recovery. When this one is dominant, when this one is active, when this one is what is online, this comes online when there's harmony between the mind and the body, when there's coherence, when our soul is filled with that unshakable inner peace, when we feel joy, when we feel gratitude, when we feel love, when we feel compassion, when there's all these positive energies, these positive frequencies flowing inside, it activates the parasympathetic system. The immune system upregulates. Cellular repair starts to become more efficient. All the biological system starts coordinating. A harmony, a symphony starts creating in the body. The body starts to repair. But most of us don't get to use this side of our nervous system. Not to mention that, and the less we use this side of the nervous system, as we get older, the more we're going to have cognitive declines. See? But here's the thing. The function of the central nervous system is measured by brainwave activity, which is how they can tell through brain scans where people are living. It's reflecting our state of being. And so that's why they can say most people live stressed out. And now we're thinking that stress is just a normal part of life. It's not. It's just another common thing in life. But we can measure it through brainwave activity. When our inner state is influenced by negative thoughts and emotions, the brainwave activity stimulates the sympathetic system, which is the stress response that leads to illness. When our inner state is one of homeostasis, balance, harmony, and order, because we have positive outlooks, positive perspective, positive belief, positive emotions, the brainwave activity activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This is important for us to know because if we understand this, the obvious question is going to come out, how in the world, with the world that we live in and all that we got to deal with on a day-to-day, how can we live really with a dominant parasympathetic nervous system where our body is always in balance and always in a healing response, where if we are sick and we activate this system, the body starts to repair and recover. This is what happens with spontaneous healing. With spontaneous healing, people go through a self-discovery, a whole process of reordering their lives, re-examining their lives, and coming to a place where this becomes the dominant system and the body begins to repair. That is natural. Healing is natural to the human system, provided the order of flow and balance is there. That homeostasis is there. Now, we can measure this through brainwave activity. Now, it might be difficult for us to navigate through life to get to this. And that's why I'm going to talk about the technology. We need the help of technology. We need the help to be able to streamline this. We need to support our systems while we learn how to cultivate this. And so what we can understand from this is that disease don't happen to us. Disease happens through us. And the condition of the body is determined by the quality of spiritual life that animates and sustains it. So, if we want to look at preventing disease, reversing the effects of stress induced disease, we have to align thoughts, emotions, and our actions with truth. How we think, how we speak, what we feel, how we act, it must all be one and the same. That reduces that inner conflict. It removes the spiritual resistance. It gives that ease. There's no longer a dis-ease. There's now the natural flow. We don't have to know how to let our essence of being flow through. It's always flowing through. It's what animates our bodies right now. But it's being resisted because there's a lot of interference because of what we call stress, which is the frequencies of our thoughts and emotions, which may be more in the negative stream of things, creates that resistance. So, but if we can align our thoughts, emotions, and actions, which is a whole process of applying principles along a particular pathway and a process to bring us to this place of wholeness, which is part of the program we teach, we can do that. But the more we can do that, the more the parasympathetic nervous system becomes activated and becomes more dominant. And this now is how we restore the homeostasis and the balance and the harmony between mind and body. So that's the process. Align thoughts, emotions, and actions with truth. That's defined out in the course. Activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which will happen naturally as we do that. And it brings the mind and body into their natural balance. The result is not only healing, but it extends to every other area of our life. In this case, we're talking about health of the body and healing of the body. That brings me to the technology that I say we need to have support of this technology. This technology was invented and created by this gentleman. And he made a very bold statement, said that he's here to build something generational that will transform the world. And he is a software engineer by profession. He is brilliant and extremely successful. He didn't set out to try to do this to change the world. He set out to try to save his mother from a neurodegenerative condition, multiple sclerosis, which she had from a boy, and she was not meant to live all these years. She's still alive today. But when he became very successful, and with his wealth, he traveled the world to find solutions for her problem, only to find that there is no medical cure for it. And in his quest, he found out that the signals that go from her brain to move her muscles, that for some reason, which is not clear to the neuroscientists, the signals are not going to the muscles, and therefore she will waste away and eventually she will go. It took him 15 years and $25 million of his own money, working with the most brilliant of minds, trying to find a solution for his mother, who thankfully is still alive today because of what he discovered. He came up with a way to remove the resistance in the flow from in to out. When I understood his technology, because this has been my work, that fascinated me. He created a technology that uses no medicine, no substances, no ingredients, no equipment, no frequencies. And what it does, it removes the resistance and synchronizes the natural flow from the inside out so that the body will naturally do what it normally does. That I found was mind-blowing. Jay Dhaliwal is the founder of and the CEO of a company called the Super Patch Company. I started using these several months ago, last year, and since I've been using them and since I've shared it with other people in my work and generally, I have been nothing short of amazed of how this works. And I really shouldn't be as amazed, because when that flow from inside out is reordered, only one thing happens. The body starts to function better, and the mind starts to function better. Because you cannot enhance and bring balance to the brain and the central nervous system, which processes both thoughts, emotions, and physiology. When you bring balance back to the central nervous system and the brain, mental and physical performance and function improves. This, if you understand what I'm saying, this is so life transformative. And it is a technology that is so simple that we are going to likely think of it like the people back in the day with the light bulb who thought, well, it's just another form of what already exists. It is nothing like what exists today. It's the only technology of its type in the world that does it the way how it does it. You can go to different clinics and different institutions where they will hook you up to machines and with frequencies and try to regulate the brainwave activity to help to streamline healing in your body. And some of those clinics can do that type of thing, but they're very expensive and they're not lasting because people can't maintain something like that. I'm going to show you um, a minute and a half video where Mr. Daliwal is doing an EEG test on a subject, looking at the electroencephalograph, looking at the brainwave activity to determine. He's going to just do a demonstration with one of the technologies that he's created. So let's just take a look at that video. It's a short video. It's called Vibrotactile Trigger Technology.
Hi everyone, I'm Jay Daliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about our Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrinket, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are. We want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs, without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So Vox Life HPT, as we demonstrated with our neuro patch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness.
So just briefly on what he just said, when we measure brainwave activity, and those, if there's anyone that might have had experience in that, you know what the colors will mean as he went through. But when we measure brainwave activity, you're measuring the activity of the mind, and by extension, our state of being. So depending on the brainwave activity, it tells us what state of being and activity of the mind is taking place. Why this is important is because there's a direct link between the brainwave activity and the central nervous system. The brainwave activity influences the autonomic nervous system by signaling either the sympathetic, that's the stress response, or the parasympathetic dominance, depending on the nature and frequency of those brain waves. So if the brain waves are reflecting a state of mind and being that is stressed, the brainwave activity is chaotic, it is incoherent, and it signals the sympathetic nervous system. That leads to dysfunction, dysregulation, and decline. If the brainwave activity is more harmonious and more balanced and more orderly, which the test that he just did, when the coming from a dysregulated to becoming more regulated, the hemispheres of the brain and the different areas, centers of the brain comes into coherence and more orderly function. When that happens, you are now synchronizing and retuning the activity back to a more parasympathetic side. You're now removing the resistance that's caused by stress, what we call stress, which are frequencies of thoughts and emotions that are dysregulated or chaotic. It is now streamlining and it's now synchronizing the brainwave activity where it removes that, so that the stream and the flow that comes from our inner well-being, that which is that which built the body, runs the body, and sustains the body, the flow of that now becomes free because the brainwave activity now becomes coherent to that flow, as opposed to the erratic or disorder of it when the stress response. So it's bringing the parasympathetic system, the nervous system, so that we can experience a better quality of life, in essence. So the technology is based on Nobel Prize research that basically goes back to one part of the Nobel Prize research back in the early 30s and 40s. It just said that everything in creation emits and receives electromagnetic waves. That's basic science, we all know that. The other side of it, on the right side of the screen, the other two Nobel laureates that discovered that the skin carries neurons in them that detect everything that touches the skin. And it sends an electrical signal. Everything that touches the skin will send an electrical signal to your brain. And so, and the electrical signal carries information with it. If it's hot, if it's something crawly, if it is something sticky, whatever it is, the information goes to you, so you will know what it is. So your skin, anything that touches your skin, it converts that touch into an electrical signal because that's the language of the central nervous system. The signal goes to your brain and carries the information of carrying the information of whatever it was that touched the skin. A good way to understand it is Braille, which blind persons use to read. Braille are these raised dots on a surface arranged in tactile patterns. The patterns are arranged in such a way that determines whether it is a number, a letter, a word, a symbol, etc. When blind persons touch the tactile patterns, it sends a signal to the brain, letting them know what it is that they're touching or what it is they're reading. When that's basically the science of it, why it doesn't need to have any type of substances. Superpatch company, based on this understanding of technology and based on 15 years of research, which is what is proprietary to the company, has discovered that they can create certain patterns on the patch. And when that patch touches your skin, it sends a signal to the brain to synchronize or bring back in order or reset your brainwave activity so that the natural flow that comes from inside out now it removes the resistance so it can now flow freely. It removes the resistance so it can flow freely because it has removed the static. It has removed the dissonance. And that's how it works. So it is harnessing your body's innate natural intelligence of how it runs and heals and sustains itself, it is harnessing that and bringing that back online, but just simply by using your skin, so to speak, as a superhighway to send a signal to remove the static, to remove the interference, to bring back order, to bring back harmony so that the flow can be more efficient. 15 years of research and development, it has become peer-reviewed, published research in some of the prestigious journals around the world because it's now become cutting edge science and technology. The company has been asked to present because of this level of technology, which is not the world has not seen before, something that is so simple, that is so impactful. The company is presenting its technology at major global symposiums where the most brilliant of minds come together to look at the future of healthcare and medicine. And this is something that they have not yet seen in the field before. And so Superpatch, it really unlocks that innate potential that we have to heal by helping us to regain that flow from the inside out by synchronizing the brainwave activity. So when the mind and body are harmonized through brainwave synchronization, the mind becomes more orderly, the biological systems are more coordinated. This reestablishes homeostasis, optimizing the body's self-healing capacity. And so people who've been using super patches, they don't understand it, but they are amazed that this thing that they put onto the skin, the effects and the impact that it has on their physiology. But I want to be able to say that more than just the impact it has on their physiology or the way the body is feeling and functioning, it's having a great impact on the orderly functioning of the mind. And that is where the deep transformative nature of this goes. Superpatch has so far discovered 13 different pathways that they can regulate with the various patterns that they have on their patches. And once the patches synchronize the brainwave activity associated with those neural pathways, the body responds. And so right now, the company has 5 different patches in research and development right now, and they are really ahead of the curve in terms of what they're going to be coming out in the next couple of years with the new patches that they have in research and development. And so you're looking at cutting edge, simple but cutting edge technology that is actually harnessing the body's innate capacity to heal, to function, and optimize not just physical but also mental function. And so this is mind body solutions that enhances physical and mental well-being. It's 100% drug free. It's FDA registered. It doesn't have approval because there's no substances in it. And so there's no need for that, but it's registered as safe for use and it addresses the most common needs in health and wellness today. They're very effective. Now, when you saw the demonstration, he said within 10 seconds, that particular patch that he talked about is called the Liberty patch. People that use that, their strength and their balance and their coordination within a matter of seconds, it changes. People are often blown away, but not all the patches may work that quickly. It also depends on the individual, their circumstances, their imbalances, the age, and there are various factors that will go along. But they work generally very quickly because they all begin to work right away at synchronizing brainwave activity. The response in the body may vary from one person to the other, obviously, because we are all different in various ways. But we don't have to be concerned about contraindications, interactions with other medications, allergic reactions, because there's 0 ingredients in them. So that makes them completely safe and they're very easy to use. You don't have to worry about swallowing, looking at times for this or swallowing anything. And the good thing about it is that it's safe for children. You have a 2-year-old that has a flu or a cold, or you have the elderly that's on medication, you don't have to worry about things like that. So mind-body harmony, which is the key to homeostasis, which is the key to unlocking the body's potential to naturally heal if we can get that flow happening. Now, here's the wonderful thing, the long end of this. You may use the patches and your body will start to respond and you will start to feel better based on whatever patch you're using for whatever symptoms might be exhibiting themselves in your body. When you're well, here's the thing. As your brain waves become more synchronized and more orderly, through consistent use over time, the brain, through what they call neuroplasticity, begins to reorganize, rewire, and retrain itself to this new balance. That happens over time. But the brain will naturally rewire itself to the new order that you when that begins to happen, people start to experience different inner states, meaning they feel more patient, more tolerable. They find that their thinking becomes clearer, decision making becomes more fluent. They're not easily upset in the traffic anymore. Um, Things that will normally make them anxious and they're calmer. Different things will start to happen to different people based on your own individuality. But it is an amazing thing that you can put on something so simple as a wearable technology that is bringing your mind into more orderly function, and as a result your body starts to function better. What it's doing is unlocking that inner potential where if we begin to cultivate our thought life and our emotional response to life, we can begin to reorder the whole flow of life where we can experience a phenomenally different and more elevated quality of life. So this was the patch that was demonstrated. It is if this was the only patch that Super Patch Company had, it would be worth it because it does so much just to bring your brain into that type of coherence is something that you would have to find a monk that's been living in a monastery for the last 40 years meditating to be able to find somebody who has that type of control over their mind and over their brain. So that's a wonderful. The one for sleep is called REM. Most people do not get REM sleep, where the body heals, repairs, restores, and rejuvenates. And that's something that, let me tell you, most people do not get this level of sleep, but we're not aware of it because we think that once we sleep through the night, we have gotten that type of sleep. But when you start to experience this, you'll know the difference. The peace patch, this is for stress. You're feeling stressed, you're feeling anxious, um, you know, you're not coping well. You put this on within a matter of minutes, you start to feel more centered. But this brings the autonomic nervous system into balance, which is so critical because the average person in a modern society don't know how to keep that system balanced. Even though we might engage in cognitive practices and meditation and things like that, which I think is a must, but this only helps to enhance the whole process. The defend patch, I have not come across anything in my clinical experience that upregulates the immune system as fast and as strong as the defend patch does. You're dealing with pain, most types of pain. This is effective pain relief. For some people, it works in seconds, some people within minutes, and it all depends on individual case. But imagine being able to remove pain from your body and have a more comfortable life without having to use the chemicals and even in the over-the-counter pain meds that impact your liver and impact your kidneys. For those of us who are into sports performance or we're athletes, when you put on the victory patch, you are going to immediately feel the difference in your workout. Let me tell you, I enjoy my workouts in the gym even more because of this patch. And so, if you're athletically inclined, this is a patch you'd want to look at. The boost patch, which is the latest one that came out with, is for energy. This is 12 hours of pure, clean energy that you would have without all the chemicals and the stimulants that they have in these drinks and so on, with no crashes. I call it energy on demand. The focus patch for enhanced focus and concentration, mental clarity, memory. Everybody, we could all use that. Joy is to support optimistic moods. you're feeling a bit down or you're depressed, you put on the joy, it will start to bring you out and lift you out of that, all just through bringing the brain and the brainwave activity back into harmony. Kick It, for those who are struggling with addictions, and it's not just food addictions or substance addictions. It could be people have a lot of mental addictions. People are addicted to things like worry. They're addicted to overthinking. They're addicted to um, uh, responding to reflexively in ways, and even those type of addictions, this will help you to calm down. It calms the limbic system and the areas of your brain where these habits are emotionally encoded, and it brings that and it brings it right down, and it helps you to be able to shift your direction and come away from those habits. Lumi is a wonderful patch. It works really well to help the health of your skin in many ways. And it's always been interesting to me the impact that I've seen it's had on people with their skin. And you're not taking any substances, it's just enhancing the body's ability to do what it does naturally when everything is in order. You want to burn 25% more calories without engaging in activity. If your job prohibits you from being as active and you want to get those extra pounds off, you can get extra 300 to 500 more calories a day just at rest. And for us men, who our masculine performance that tends to wane as you get older, you can pick that up by using the rocket. So when you get a brain in sync, you have a body in balance. And when the brain's rhythms flow harmoniously, because the brain waves are now synchronized, the body's systems, they resonate in accord. This synchronization fosters the natural healing, the vitality, and higher states of well-being. So when you synchronize the patches and use them in combination, you get a different level of performance, a different level of function in your body, and even a different function in your cognitive abilities when they're combined. These are not things that you use as a medicine. These are things that becomes part of your lifestyle. You may start out using a certain amount of patches based on dealing with issues, and then you may just eventually come down to just where you may just use a couple of the foundational patches to keep your immune system, your autonomic nervous system, and your brain properly balanced, and to make sure you enhance, you have a higher state of living. They're very easy to use, simple patches. Each patch lasts for 24 hours. And the good thing about it is that, which was a very big thing for me, is that the super patch technology has undergone intensive research and development, peer reviewed studies, and is real world tested. And so that's part of that is done by this medical advisory board. The real world application of it is done by these brilliant doctors who are all accomplished in their own right and who also work with the research and development team of the company in helping to make sure that we have a technology that is compliant, a technology that is to the standard, and a technology that the efficacy is proving itself to be exactly what it is. So if you want to think about getting aligned from the inside out. You don't have to worry about how to heal the body. The body will heal if the inside is balanced, if the inside is in harmony, if the inside, what comes from what gives us experience, our central nervous system, and that is in harmony, everything starts to function in order. This is a technology that has not existed. So these are in advanced solutions. And what I really love about it is that they're being tailored by you, tailored for you by you. Your body, by its own innate intelligence, is determining how this is to be used based on your needs. This is absolutely phenomenal. We have a Facebook group that has thousands of testimonies from people all over the world that's been using this technology. The technology is relatively new, just a couple of years on the market, but it's having a global impact already. Um, and so I hope that you've heard something that would really pique your interest, not just with the technology, because it's an amazing technology. The simplicity of it can tend to go past our heads, but the simplicity of it, because it's working with what's already inbuilt and it's harnessing that and it's removing the resistance so the natural flow takes place. That's absolutely mind-blowing and phenomenal to me, understanding physiology. And the result is you see the results physically and you feel the results psychologically, in clearer mentality. And so part of um, how Jay Dhaliwal, how he wants to impact the world through he's saying he wants to build something generational that will help to change the world. How he does that is that he has chosen the way of marketing this globally, and it may not be for everyone, but anyone who might have an interest in wanting to be part of the movement. I have joined the movement because I think it's something that everybody needs. It fits into my work perfectly, yes, but it's something that everybody needs to have a medicine-less thing, to be able to harness your own well-being and take responsibility for your life and for your health. I have not come across anything better than this. Now, this does not take away the fact that your nutrition and all the other physical factors, absolutely essential, but because everything comes from inside out, this is foundational and this is really life-changing. I have joined Jay's mission in trying to get this to people and I'll tell you, have not been disappointed. It really is life changing. For those of you who may have an interest in wanting to know what that is like and what the company offers with that, on Monday evening at 7 p.m., we talk about that for those who may be interested in that. And so with that, there's a Zoom link. You can speak to myself, or if you were invited on by someone else, you can speak to them about how you can get the Zoom link to attend that session if you have an interest in that. And so with that, I want to say thank you for everyone for taking the time and coming on and giving us the opportunity to share this with you. If I had to, while I really have I'm really amazed with the technology, the simplicity, the effectiveness of it. My passion really is to be able to help people to understand and to learn how to harness their own life and to take responsibility and to not live a stressful life by learning to reorder the flow of life from the inside out through the way we perceive, understand the world we interact with, understand ourselves, and learn to live in that order. And so let me tell you, the future of health and the future of healing is not in the old model. That could save our life, but it's not going to keep us healthy and it's not going to help us to stay disease free. What we talked about is just the tip of the iceberg, but what we talked about will take us onto that. And so with that, I want to say thank you. God bless you all for coming on and taking the time to be here with us. And so we'll see you, for those of you who have an interest, we may see you on Monday evening. So good night.